Hi guys, so I'm just here to Hi guys, so I'm just here to film this quick video. Apologies if I don't look 100% my beautiful 10 out of 10 self. I'm also starting to become sick. Anyway, so I'm doing this video, and this video is basically to say that I lied to you. No, not even that I lied to you, but just the fact that I read books that are problematic. And this video is inspired by Jessie on YouTube, and specifically the YouTube video that's like black problematic authors, or problematic books that I love that I can ethically recommend. I think those are the titles of the videos. There's a whole series of them, so I'll link them down below and you can check them out. And every single time, I love this entire videos concept, and I think that it really does challenge me as a reader to identify like the fact that there can be nuance in that I can like a book that's problematic, and it doesn't make it any less problematic. And that how do we treat black authors who have created problematic works and all of that. And so there's loads of conversations in those videos, and I think that this is my turn, I guess, to be authentic in that way and to come to you and be like, I have loved books while being on the internet that I can't ethically recommend, that are inherently problematic, and that I might have touched on at the time, but I also might not have. And I also recognize that there are lots of other books that I have read and that I have loved that are problematic. And just because, here's another thing, just because I'm black doesn't mean that I haven't read things that are racially problematic and just kept it moving. Because I think that in my history of reading, it's only very, very recently that I'm starting to see better representation. And I think that there's a sort of like blindness that I have sometimes when I'm reading books. And I'm not saying that this is the best thing. In fact, I'm actually saying it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. But that's why I also wouldn't recommend you to go and check out my Goodreads, because I know I have like legacy star ratings and opinions on books that I don't stand by any longer. But that's how young Kemi felt when all of the books that she was reading were most likely problematic or held some problematic content. So, or maybe they weren't, I didn't view them as problematic at the time, but I would now. So I want to be authentic in that way. And so I've got a couple of books that I want to talk to you about that I have read since starting this channel, that I've changed my opinions on, that I no longer feel the same on, that I think are problematic, or I even thought were problematic then, but I've sat with it for longer and I'm like, yeah, no, I can't ethically recommend these books, and I want to loudly be authentic in that way. So I hope you kind of get what I'm trying to say. I think this is quite off the cuff, and I think that that's the way it should be. I think I should come to you quite vulnerable and open and honest, and just have a conversation. So with that in mind, let's get started. We're going to start with the black authors first. And so we're going to start with The List by Yomi Adegoke, I believe. So I read this book, and I have a whole dedicated vlog to reading this book, and I had a great time reading it. And I want to acknowledge the bias. And I think if you watch the vlog, you will see the bias. The bias in the vlog is the fact that I went to go see the author. I created some sort of like parasocial relationship from watching this author interview. Do you know what I mean? I created a bias there from watching that interview. And then when I went and got my book signed, my mum's taking it. She wants to read it. So when I went and got my book signed, I was like, oh, by the way, you live quite local to me. And then we had a whole conversation about living locally. And I think that may perhaps have coloured my interpretation of the book. But also I want to say that I also have a lot of internalized sexism and misogyny swirling around in my body. So yeah, and that's the main problem with this book. The main problem that I have with The List, I'm not going to tell you what these books are about. This book is basically about this high-powered female journalist, and she is a feminist writer, and so she is very much caught up in like the Me Too movement at the time, and making sure to hold the men to account via her publication, etc, 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 right? And she's also half of this it-powered dark-skinned black couple. And yeah, they've just garnered a lot of local fandom, right? And one day she wakes up and her husband has been accused on a list on social media, where he's been accused of some sort of sexual harassment, violence towards women, right? And they're engaged. I tell you, they're engaged. So then it's like, what's she going to do? because usually she'd be the first person on Twitter talking about it. But now, you know what I mean, what is she going to do, because that's her fiance? And I think that I resonated with this book in a lot of ways. I resonated in the fact that the author was talking about how having dark skin representation, like a couple representation, is rare, especially, let me say, in our social pockets. I recognise that different social pockets have different realities, but in our reality, seeing a dark skinned man with a dark skinned woman, especially if it was like around my area, as I said, who are doing well for themselves financially, living that soft life, you know what I mean? That is rare to see, and I think can be held up on a bit of a pedestal. Like, oh, when is it my turn? Do you know what I mean? And so understanding and relating to that topic in this book was, you know, interesting. And then obviously there were lots of other conversations about like being in racist institutions when you're like a corporate girly. When you're a corporate girly, or when you're not necessarily a corporate girly, because it's not explicitly, it's a media organization. But the problem that this book has is in what it is trying to say, because the whole conversation is, did he or did he not do it? And then it goes into interrogate all the different people on the list and whether or not they did or didn't do it. And I think that in itself and how that is handled is quite problematic. And the fact that it's not believing women. The answer is not believe women in this book. And really truthfully, realistically, a lot of the times that these men are accused of things, believe them, you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's necessarily the takeaway that you get from this book. And I think that Lauren from the books, when she read it and she said that, was like, damn, you were so correct. Like, you were so correct about that. In the fact that how, I don't know, it's hard for me to go into this without going into spoilers into what I think is problematic with it. But just that whole conversation. And I thoroughly agreed with her for saying that. And I agree. But I do think that this goes to show that, like, how thirsty I am for local representation. I want to see people being written about in my area, in my local area, and I don't think that's something necessarily to be ashamed of. I struggle because A, I don't want to give away where I live on the internet, and B, without having context of where I live and what that necessarily represents, you wouldn't necessarily understand it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you're in an underrepresented area, or an area that doesn't necessarily have like the best reputation, you don't see yourself in fiction, you aren't, like, my local area isn't really in fiction. When it is, it's not done in a positive light. So to see someone who's from that area big up the area and talk about it in an authentic way, even in the smallest passages, I don't think that people who are outside of the area would even understand that. But like, what are you talking about? Like, it barely talks about it, but it's in the small, minute details in the culture of the book that I can relate to it. So anyway, I think I've said enough, but basically that's how I feel about the list. And I actually really did love it, but I just can't ethically recommend it to anyone. I have to ethically say that this book is problematic in what it's talking about, and it's quite simplistic. It doesn't really go into it with much nuance. Not that it's trying to. If it was trying to go into it with too much nuance, I wouldn't like it. It's contemporary, not lit fic, as I said in that video. But anyway, I'm gonna move on. Because yeah, so this is again a black British author. What do we do with that? You know what I mean? I read it, I loved it, but you know, there were some parts that it didn't do justice in a way. Then next up we have this book, We Are Not Like Them, which is co-written. It's co-written by a black woman and a white woman, and I think this was the first book on my internet career that really left me stumped, because I finished reading this book and I really did enjoy it. I didn't read an arc. I bought this arc afterwards. I really did enjoy it, and then I read reviews and I was like, if you can literally see how my face and my heart bottomed out. So basically, the idea of this story is that we follow a friendship between a black and a white woman, and I don't know how much it tells you. I've just realised I don't know how much it tells you about it, so I don't want to tell you too much. But basically it follows this black and a white woman, and the white woman shoots. I'm going to tell you what I think is relevant. The white woman's white husband shoots an unarmed black boy and then it focuses on their relationship. Again, the black woman's a journalist, so I don't know what that says, but yeah, why did I enjoy this? I enjoyed this in how it interrogated black and white female relationships, and the fact that I have been in a lot of black and white female relationships. And I would also say that a lot of these were when I was younger. I'm still friends with white people. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but it's problematic. And I've been in a lot of problematic black and white female friendships, and I think I felt, again, seen in that problematic area, and feeling like, as a black person, that you have to hold space for your white friend to be problematic, and that's not right. That's not okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't happen. And how sometimes she weighs against, like, I've known this person for so long, yet they are so inherently problematic. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I struggle with that relationship. And I know that not necessarily everybody feels that way, but I think that I have struggled with those similar conversations. Not in the fact that, like, any of my friends, like, this exact situation, but I guess those feelings I could relate to, and so it means that I had a strong attachment. However, how this book ended, there was no justice. There's absolutely no justice in this book, and how it ends is like, do you think that's acceptable? Do you think that's acceptable? And the white woman is just so out of pocket. It's just like, there's so many things. I actually would tell nobody. Sorry, would not recommend this book at all. At all. I'm not even planning to read from this author duo again. But I can't deny that this book resonated with me for that. And seeing this black woman undergo this transformation where she's distancing from her white friend, but her white friend is just so, I don't know, I just resonated, but it's problematic. I'm going to put up some Goodreads reviews here because, as I said, it was reading those Goodreads reviews that made me change my mind. So I don't even have the full 100% explanation for why it's problematic, but I can just hear that information, hear that feedback and go, you know what, you're right. And I think that perhaps if I hadn't resonated with the other half of the conversation, I would have seen that too. But also, as I said, I'm a growing person. I haven't actually said this. I'm a growing person. What I see is problematic changes. I get more knowledge as I grow. Hey guys, I'm editing here, and I just wanted to come and say my thoughts. I still am going to include some screenshots of other people talking about it, but I feel like it deserves some more of a conversation than what it is. This book, I feel like, in talking about white friendships, black and white friendships, I think that what I enjoyed most about this book was the fact that it made me think, as opposed to what the thinking was doing in the book. I think by me saying that it really encouraged conversations about the problematic tendencies that can happen in black and white friendships, that makes it sound like the book did a really good job at doing that. I don't even necessarily think the book did a great job. Sorry, my nails are so bad. I don't even think that the book did a great job at showing that. I just think that, because specifically my memories of reading this book was me reading it and then me spending loads of time really thinking about my own experiences. So in a way, it's like, was that the book or was that you, babe? I say that to say that this book, I felt like, was very much pandering to white fragility in terms of the topics that it covered and the conclusions and the outtakes. There was a lot of heavy onerous. Now, this might go into spoilers slightly, but there is a lot of burden that is placed on the black friend in this book. And I actually understand that. I actually do kind of agree with that because, as I said, I've been in a lot of relationships where the burden of talking about race and having to hold space for white friends, even like when they're doing wrong stuff, the burden has been placed on me as the black friend. And I think that there are some negative reviews that talk about that and they're like, oh, why did she have to do that? That's so unrealistic. And I will say that there are lots of things in this book that aren't done well, but I actually disagree with that point. I actually think that is kind of realistic to have a lot of the burden. That is why there's the book Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, because of the fact that it is so often that as the black person, you are expected, not only do you end up, but you are expected to be the person who always has to educate, to always has to hold space, to always has to be okay to allow someone else to go through their I guess, anti-racist journey on you. They have to trial out they have to unpack all of their own racist problematicness on you because you are their friend. But again, as I said, I do feel like this book didn't necessarily go into all of those conversations. It didn't say what I just said in the book. It didn't do that, but it did encourage me to think that. And so I think that when I read this book, I was like, oh my God, those conversations, I absolutely loved it. And I did love the book, but at the same time, I recognise that, like, that's not necessarily an authentic representation of this book. And I also still agree with that, like, yes, it was very much pandering to white fragility in this book. Like, the ending is honestly horrible. I feel like I keep talking about the ending, but I think that perhaps if the ending had gone in a different way, it could have reflected something different. But the way that it ended, because the majority of this book is like them in turmoil, but the conclusion was really, really, really where it like was the final nail in the coffin for this. So after saying all of that, I am still going to include the screenshots of the Goodreads stuff. I'll only put them on the screen momentarily, so pause it if you want to read them. Otherwise, I'll keep it going quite quickly for everybody else. So there's that. And then next we're going to go on to another book that has some representation, that has me like closing my eyes at other parts of the book. And that book is By Way of Sorrow by Erin McCabe. Now, this is a legal thriller that I read. And I actually want to do myself justice because I rewatched the video that I spoke about it in. And basically, sorry, let me tell you what it's about. Basically, it follows this Erin McCabe, who is a trans woman lawyer. And in that book, she then has to defend another trans woman who is been placed in a male jail. And then we follow Erin McCabe like having to try and find justice for this other trans woman, right? That's what it's about. And overall, it's so refreshing for me to see that sort of representation in the crime thriller space. It's happening more and more, and I think the more that I search it out, the more that I find. But still, it's still so refreshing. I still, to this day, feel like a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I can't describe it, right? I sound dramatic, but I don't feel so. I don't feel so. I think that I can't give you any stats and figures, but my brain is a stats and figures brain, so I want to tell you, like, this is rare. And so reading it, I was like, oh my God, yes! Oh my God, yes! Do you know what I mean? However, the author, the author has used the N-word liberally in this book as a way to show people being racist in this book and to villainize them. And at the time that I read this book, I was like, you know, some people will feel different ways because the author is white. People will feel different ways about that, you know what I mean? I don't know how I feel at the moment. I feel fine about it. I no longer feel fine about it. I think it's lazy. I think there's no need. There's absolutely no need. There are other ways to show you're racist without having to automatically use the N-word as a crutch. And maybe, and I think this was their debut, but I just feel like, no, absolutely not. It's not your place. It's not your place. It's actually how I feel. It's just not your place. And I'm so thankful. So thankful that they didn't write this book in the way that they originally went to. They originally wanted to write it from the black trans woman's perspective, and then they were like, hold on, wait, that's not my story to tell. And I agree, it's not their story to tell. But the rest of the series, I enjoy. So where do we go from here? Well, I have to give in with the second one. But I'm going to continue reading this series. I am. And to be fair to you, I feel like there's also an ongoing background arc, which means those characters that have used those slurs in the book 1, whilst I didn't use those slurs in book 2, they might likely come back on page and use those slurs again in book 3. Where do I sit with that? Right now, as I said when I made that video, right then I was fine with it being used. I'm no longer fine with it being used in the first book. I don't think that that's correct. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. And it has sat with me, and I no longer feel that way. But I'm still going to read the next book. And I'm still going to support this author because period poo. Yes. Period poo, there should be more trans rep in the crime thriller space. Because you know what I mean? Like, and this increased representation in books has been so refreshing to see, to read. I love it. Post 2020. But it's not equal across the genres, right? And I do think that crime mystery thrillers are one of the genres that have not been as progressive as other areas. And then we've got books that I just enjoy for entertainment and so allowed them to be problematic, which I think is the worst area. Like, babe, stand up. Stand up. So what? Entertainment will just have you closing your eyes. Just closing your eyes, refusing to see. That's not okay, girl. So the first book I have is Soulless. This book, oh my goodness. So this book basically follows, this is a paranormal romance mystery series, basically. Historical, did I say? It's basically set in like the Regency, Victorian, it's not telling me on the back, series. And there is just, it's a propulsive book, right? Do not get me wrong, it's a propulsive book, but it is dripping in colonial idealization. The woman loves off the British Empire. Babe, no, actually, seriously, babe, what the actual hell? Like, this is one of the worst. Like, babe, like, even on the back, she said she now resides in the colonies. What? With a harem of Armenian lovers and tea imported from London. What? This author loves off the British colony. She's an imperialistic colonizer. Stop, let me not say that. Let me take it back. No, but like, honestly though, she loves off the British Empire. Like, she has, and in this book, the main characters and such, they're like, yes. They hold colonialistic beliefs. Let me tell you something. The main family in this book, yeah, they have a plantation. They do. They are investing in a plantation. Don't get it twisted. They don't like anyone who's not English. I'm pretty sure there's like, oh, so the main guy, he's Scottish, and there's just pure xenophobia, like, against the Scottish guy in the book, but he's Scottish, right? And we all know, like, the history of, like, fraught relationship with England and Scotland, right? And England and Ireland and all of the such. And her views, problematic, babe. Problematic. But did I read this entire series? Yeah, I did. Did I binge this entire series? Yeah, I did. Did I know she was a colonizer sympathizer at the time I was reading it? Yes, I did. Also, the representation of a gay character in this felt very stereotypical to me. It felt very like gay best friend stereotypes. Was not a fan. I don't feel like it was done with nuance. So because it was a good time. I read this entire series. What does that say? And lastly, gotta go back to work. My lunch break is finished. So we're going to quickly go through this. It's Powerless. And I even pointed out the problems that I had with Powerless at the time. But at the time I was like, yeah, it's got this. So Powerless, sorry, if you don't know, is basically a Hunger Games ripoff. Right? That's all you really need to know. I have a video where I read Powerless and books that bring compared to Hunger Games. But there was this whole, like, mammy situation going on there. Like, the relationship with the cook and the prince was really, 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 truthfully, it was not a vibe. And ever since I've sat with it, and I'm just like, I get more and more ick and more like, actually, no, yuck. Actually, no, that's not great. Like, I always knew it was problematic, but, like, it was more like, oh, it's problematic, we can brush it to the side. Because, as I said, I have a tendency to do that, which is not okay. It's not okay. And the longer I've gained distance from Powerless, I'm like, yeah, no, yuck. Yeah, no, yuck. I want no part of it. I'm not going to read the sequel. I'm not going to recommend this book. Yeah, no, yuck. That's not great articulation. But I don't have much else to say, but disgusting, quite frankly. So clearly my opinions have soured since all of these videos that I made where I've talked about all of these books. But I hope you give me some grace. And I hope you can understand that, like, I don't know. No, you don't have to understand. You can call me out. Quite rightly. Because I think that, quite rightly, I deserve to get called out. Quite rightly. Where are we? Quite rightly. Look what's sitting behind me. Look what is actually sitting behind me as I'm talking to you. Fourth Ring. Now, you will not see me recommend Fourth Ring. So this is a book that I enjoyed. The thing is, I disliked the beginning, I disliked the end, but again, it was propulsive, and I enjoyed the middle bit. But you will never see me recommend this book. You know you won't. I own it, so I could get rid of it. There's nothing stopping me from getting rid of it. But you won't see me recommend this book. I'm sorry. Sorry, you won't. So that's another case. But I think at the time, I even cut it out of my video. I even cut it out of my original video, again, the Hunger Games video, because I was like, no, we're not going to give this woman airtime. And the video that I spoke about is unlisted. So, moral of the story, do you know what? If you see me talking about a book in the future that's problematic, and I'm like, I enjoyed it, but it was problematic, know that you can say, babe, sorry, what? It was problematic. I had such a great time. It was so problematic. Please stop me. Please be like, in a nice, respectful way, be like, babe, can we lower the tone? Can we lower the tone a little bit? And think about what you've just said, because often, like now, a couple months later, I'm like, I said what? Do you know what I mean? At the time, I'm like, I had such a good time. It was so problematic. So yeah, I'm glad that we had this conversation. I'm glad. So I don't know how to end it. And also my lunch break is over, so I need to go. Okay? I think how I'm going to end it is the last thing of, I'm not perfect. And even still, I'm telling you guys right now, I'm reading a book now that me in 5 years is going to go, babe, what the actual heck? Like, what are you doing? So treat me with grace, but also call me out. Do you know? No, call me in, you know what I mean? And also, I think the more that I can keep myself accountable, perhaps the less that will happen. Yeah, that's how I'm gonna end. Herby is a creator, not a bookish creator. I'll link them down below. But they end their videos by saying, I'm constantly in a state of practice, and you can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. And I feel like that accurately surmises what I meant to say. So I shall see you guys later. Mwah! Bye, my loves. I love you. Peace and love. Bye, guys.